Hello, everyone. My name is Iveta Kažoka. I represent public policy think tank PROVIDUS here in Latvia, and it's a great honor to be moderating this debate on European Union accession with three candidates from Latvia to European Parliament, and I'm certain that this is going to be a very interesting discussion. But I must warn in advance that we have 1 hour and 30 minutes, but we will probably try to shorten our time a bit to 1 hour and 20 minutes, because there's one sporting competition happening right after this event, and candidates are invited to take part there. So I will give you the all possibilities to ask your questions, but nevertheless, let's try to be concise and brief, so that the candidates make it to this novus competition, and hopefully also bring back good results from there. But before I introduce you to candidates, let's understand who is in this audience. How many of you are citizens of Latvia? Okay, many, but not all of us. No, not all of you. Who are from other countries? Okay, are you going to, please raise your hands, those of you who are from other countries, but who are going to vote for European Parliament elections here in Latvia? Okay, not so many. I would like a team member of mine who has a microphone. Are you the one with a microphone? Maybe go to several other people here in this audience, and if you could ask them where are they going to vote. Please raise your hands, those of you who are not from Latvia, but who are going to vote in some other countries. So just a short inquiry, where are you from, and then are you skipping these elections altogether, or are you voting somewhere?
We're both from Lithuania, and are you gonna vote?
Of course.
Yeah. Same. I'm gonna vote, of course, because there are very concerning tendencies now with ultra-right, far-right, sorry. So it is must to vote now. Otherwise, Lithuania and the Baltic countries are integrated European Union community, right? And if we do not participate, so we're as well influencing our policies by directives and other by other policies as well. So it is a must.
Well, that's a really good attitude. So who else did raise your hand? Okay.
I'm from Germany, and I'm of course going to go to vote.
Okay. Maybe somebody else? No. Is there somebody who is skipping these elections, like not voting at all? Okay, if we could get the microphone to explain. Maybe you're too young. Or maybe you are a protester.
Hi, everybody. I come from Italy, and I will not vote, unfortunately, because I'm here, and I'm an intern here, and I didn't know I would be in Latvia for the time of elections, and I couldn't sign the documents. That's why.
Bureaucratic problems.
Yeah.
This is something that probably needs to be solved by next European Parliament elections. But okay, majority of you are going to vote and are going to vote in Latvia, and that's why I think you are interested in the three candidates we have here with us. And let me introduce you with them. Robert Zīle is already in European Parliament. He is Vice President of European Parliament. In fact, he represents a political group called European Conservatives and the Reformists group, and he is running for European Parliament elections once again. Right next to him is Elīna Pinto. It's her first elections, isn't it? You haven't?
Europeans, yes.
Yeah, European Parliament elections. She represents Progressive political party, which is affiliated with European Green Party. So that's Elīna. And Ivanna Volochiy. She represents a political party called Kustība. How do you translate it in English? You don't.
Movement for.
You don't. Movement for, but it's a liberal political party. Ivanna is originally from Ukraine. You are a citizen of Belgium. Yes, and as these are European Parliament elections, it's a normal thing for people to move around and both run for office in one country and maybe vote in some other country. That's what European Union is all about. So we have 3 candidates with us, and this day has already been filled with discussions relating to one specific topic. So these are not going to be a discussion on social policies or on environment or migration, but rather one very specific topic, namely European Union accession. And I know that the people in this audience have thought already quite a lot about this topic, but I'm not sure to what extent the candidates here in front of us have already also been thinking about what to, how should Europe should look like in near or maybe more distant future. So let me pose a first question in this way. Do you believe that by 2030, so in 6 years' time, there will be more member states in European Union than currently? And if somebody of you is prepared to speak, just raise your hand. I will give the floor. Robert.
Well, I am not will not speak. Hello to everybody, first of all. I wouldn't say that I believe, but I think it must be, like as you said, it must be during the next 6 years some new members in European Union, and definitely Ukraine and Moldova because of geographical reasons. It doesn't mean that Western Balkans cannot join. About Georgia, I hope we will discuss more detailedly. So I can explain also why I'm thinking so later on, but it's definitely must be in. Otherwise, there is geopolitics will change significantly with a serious, how to say, impact to European Union.
Okay, this is what must happen, but as you said, but the likelihood of this happening, like would you say
why. There
50%, 80%, 10% chance
no,
of this happening?
Because I'm running for the, of course, European Parliament will not decide about this legally. It will be decided by member states. So it means it's more intergovernmental issue. So, but anyway, I think we can make an influence on this decision. So we have to work to this direction. But to believe or not to believe, it's not the way. But you can believe maybe if you are outside of the those who are not politically influencing this directly, those decisions. That's why I would say I don't want to use percents on believe. I would like that European leaders have to understand what is most crucial priorities in the nearest few years. And if we will lose the time and not make a decision in this direction, starting negotiations already started with Ukraine, but it should go on, and whatever happened with Russian aggressive, we have to find the best solution and to make more strong European Union, European continent.
Okay, I do understand your point about this not being a question of percentages, but rather whether the change is possible and whether leaders of different European Union member states would be convinced that this is necessary. But nevertheless, maybe let's keep this year 2030. At what point you are definitely sure that European Union would have more members than it is right now? By 2050?
It's again, you're asking me predictions. I will not do it. So
no, you're not.
I will not do it. It would be unfair from my side.
Okay. Elīna, Ivanna, would you be prepared to come up with some estimates?
Well, for me personally, and also for progressives, and also for European Greens, we see enlargement as a strong lever of Europe's credibility. It's also a matter of our security, solidarity, and resilience. And this is the crucial time, actually, to deliver on all of these core pillars of what Europe stands for. Therefore, we have defined as an ambitious goal, but yet one that we will work strongly forward. That 2030 is the year when we have to see the next wave of EU enlargement. It means that we have to do a lot internally and in our relations with our partners. But what is Europe if not an ambitious project of peace and resilience? So we're ready to put all our effort into making this happen.
But would you also, like Mr. Zīle, focus on 2 countries, namely Ukraine and Moldova, or would you say that this enlargement should be larger than that?
We definitely see that in order not to let our neighborhood slip into the sphere of influence both of Russia but also other global players like China, it's essential that we move forward both on the Eastern Front but also on Western Balkans.
Okay, one more follow-up question. There was this idea And probably I agree with that the most important thing is to convince the leaders in European Union and member states that this is something that is absolutely necessary. And all three of you, if you are going to be elected in European Parliament, you are going to work in these political groups. You are associated with parties at European level. Do you think that in context of green politicians across Europe, this is something that they would agree with, that basically European Union needs to expand and expand quite rapidly?
It's actually a common position for the European Greens that is defined in our electoral manifesto, and it's an interesting tendency, a change of sort of a mood within the European Greens when we see that the traditional strongholds of green policies in Western and Northern Europe they're not perhaps doing as well in terms of popular support, whereas there is a strong hope that the eastern part and southern part of Europe can deliver on sort of to continue the green wave rolling. We see in Latvia also that we as progressives, in the past few years only, we have first become the biggest part of the Riga City Council, then entered the parliament, we entered the government last fall, and this is the next step where we want to also switch on the European levers for making the green policies resist the tendencies of rolling back and undermining them. And therefore, for European Greens as a family, as a whole, the eastern part of Europe and the south, including Western Balkans, where we have already some strong contenders in Western Balkans that align with the Greens, this is the area of hope for the green policies. Will not come without a challenge, some of which is sitting next to me, but we're ready to take this on.
Okay, thank you, Elīna. Ivanna, do you believe that by 2030 Ukraine will be part of European Union?
So I'm very happy to be here because this is just the reinforcement of this moral argument, why we are all here. So, and I am kind of a manifestation of that the Latvian party has put the leading candidate, Ukrainian, as the head of their list. However, the moral argument, I would like to really bring we had a lot of discussions today, and within this room, it's there, and I'm very happy it is there. There is this consensus among us that Ukraine has to be part of the EU, and the enlargement will be taking place. And from the Ukrainian side, I would like to say, because there were some questions about that, there is 83% of Ukrainian, according to the polls, Ukrainians who are in favor of joining the EU. However, let's talk about, but every time, and this is how EU works, and this is how Brussels works, when we go to technical issues and when we go to the concrete things which are on the table, concrete things which are, Commission is working on, the member states are working on, and this is where we start going into trouble. So I'm very happy to have the moral argument, but when we talk about the technicalities, first of all, and this is something we have not discussed today, that the enlargement has happened so far by the budgets. It's in correlation with the EU budget, so it is per 7 years. Now the next budget is finishing at the 27, then we are looking at another budget which will be adopted for another 7 years. So this is, again, let's talk about, if we are putting declarations, let's put them concretely when they are going into the technical details of what is at stake. At the same time, we are, and we were in the economy group today discussing that, what about the agricultural policy? What about cohesion policy? What about the institutional reform? What about real details that will actually prevent from, there's 140 points that each member state has to discuss and can veto when the actual negotiations will go into place, which actually will be happening, it's in June, right? They will start. So let's talk about that, and this is the time where Ukrainians would probably understand in that, because I'm coming that from the so we understand that the technical side is important. It will take place time to implement, and this technical side is also very important to understand because we are working on this already today. So this integration process, for example, the association agreement that Ukraine is having with the EU is the unprecedented agreement that has not taken place before. So EU is learning how to integrate, how to enlarge, and we are now being part of the process. Ukraine is now having the DCFTAs as we speak now. So this is where the argument we are talking that the enlargement will be tomorrow and, well, sorry, not tomorrow, kind of like in the future, we are talking about this integration that is happening now. So I'm sitting in the 50-50 to answer your question, where, you know, I am a Ukrainian in my heart, but I am a bureaucrat from Brussels, and I know how the bureaucracy can be in the way of very concrete things when it's...
Okay, Ivanna, what about other countries? Ukraine is not the only one candidate country. Do you believe that some of them will be in European Union soon?
I think we are talking here about the enlargement altogether. So I know that Ukraine is a big kind of part of the pie. However, it is, again, and not taking out Ukraine out of the picture, it is a merit-based process. So let's talk about merits, and let's talk about whether these merits have been achieved for each individual member states, and then we will be opening the discussion whether they are ready to enter, whether Ukraine is ready to enter, and whether the European Union public, luckily in Latvia and Baltic states, it's more or less on the agenda and they are pro, but how about the rest of the member states? And this is where the role of Latvia and Baltic is very important to put this on the agenda. So.
Okay, thank you. We have heard the first opinions from our candidates, but right now I wanted to turn to our audience and ask you to raise the hand of those of you who would say that European Union should not expand in the foreseeable future, whether we're thinking about 2030, 2035. Okay, so there are no such...
Unanimity, like in council.
Okay. Okay. Like basically, okay. So that's if I understand correctly, then that means that this audience either believes that the European Union should expand, or people are undecided about that. Okay, but please now raise your hands, those of you who believe that it's feasible that by 2030 we will see larger European Union, who would say that yes, it's a possibility. Okay, could you please go to 2 or 3 of those people who have raised their hands, and I will ask them what gives you this certainty, not certainty, why are you so hopeful about that?
I think European Union will be bigger on the next years because we see that many countries also on Balkans are very active on this process of integration to European Union. And also we see, of course, right now in Georgia is many problems with democracy and corruption and others. But we see also a specific civic many active people who are against this regime and who is for Europe and who see a Georgian future in Europe. And I see that it could be in the future Georgia will be in the European Union, and also countries on the Balkans. So.
Okay, yes. Thank you. So, some other answers to the question, why do you believe that there will be more countries in European Union by 2030?
No more volunteers, no?
Yeah, but shortly.
Yeah, I think we must be optimistic, and we must say that it's necessary, so then it becomes, like, word becomes the the reality. That's my wishful thinking, yeah.
Okay, wishful thinking. That's a very honest response. So, okay, but one more response, and then I will give you the floor.
Thank you. First of all, I'm Ukrainian, so that's why I truly believe that European Union with Ukraine will be even stronger, and we need Ukraine in European Union, and we are now in the process of really active reforms in Ukraine, even during the war times, but still we are trying. It's not that easy because everyone is saying that about only a corruption process that is happening in Ukraine, but we need always to take into account that we are now facing the biggest aggressor now in the world, and we are still doing something to achieve this aim of the reforms that European Union is expecting from us. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay,
if I may to react, you see, the audience was not also very optimistic about this. Everybody wished to do it.
Yes.
But Ivanna said it was actually, we just started, and I hope we will discuss more detailedly, because this is not only technical issues, what you said about financial resources, because of course, enlargement gives, some opportunity. Definitely it would be bigger single market, more people, but GNI will increase not so much, so only 2.5%. On current EU. At the same time, there are, of course, lots of challenges, and financials are, it's not only technical issues, it's political issues, clearly political issues, because if enlargement happens with all the candidate countries, it means GNI in the European Union will decrease by more than 14% down. And it's a serious political challenge for any politicians in the European Union. What is the result? And if we will not change the next 7 years budget rules, so it's mean increase on expenditure side would be more than 20%. And it's mean an agriculture should increase from current 40% of European Union budget to 66%. So that means changes of rules of all common agriculture policy, for example. It's politically so painful for leaders in the European Union. There would be farmers burning not only Brussels and Paris, but many other capitals as well. It's really serious issues, and it's not only technical. But thank you for that you started to touch this point.
We will discuss it definitely in much more detail, but Elīna wanted to say something.
Yes, certainly Russia's war of aggression has set a very gruesome backdrop to this discussion on enlargement. And we might be tempted to think of enlargement as a choice of desperation. But I insist that this must be a European choice of determination. Because it's the only rational choice. It's the rational choice in terms of the geopolitical case we're making by future-proofing our democracies, our rule of law systems, and by future-proofing also our economies. And it has also a very strong business rationale. It means enlarging our single market. It means strengthening our supply chains. It means also having new testing grounds for new greener technologies, bringing in partners that are already strong in these areas, like digitalization, for instance, in Ukraine. So I insist that this is not just a matter of belief or of desperation. This is a determined and a rational choice. And definitely, we will have to also work internally, because every transformation requires making Europe more capable of acting. This means revising the rules of our decision-making. This means also, like it was mentioned, for instance, transforming our agricultural policies, which are deeply dysfunctional already in how they're impacting our environment, in terms of how it's impacting our demographics in the regions and peripheries, as we see here in Latvia very strongly. So I think this is a very timely wake-up call also for Europe to review of how we're functioning and to make us stronger, more capable of acting, and also greener.
Okay, thank you. We will, as I promised, allocate quite a lot of time relating to institutional reforms and other reforms that European Union maybe needs, maybe it doesn't, depends on how you look at it. But let's, for now, linger a bit on those candidate countries and the prospect for them joining European Union. I went to the website of European Commission and to see the list of who is right now candidate country, and then saw a list of 9. And I just wanted to ask you, to what extent you believe, if it was up to you, Would you take all of them in one go? Would you prioritize? And let me name those countries. So, who are running? Who is waiting on Europe to make its decision and also to reform their own societies, like Albania, Bosnia and Herzegovina, Georgia, Moldova, Montenegro, North Macedonia, Serbia, Turkey, and Ukraine. And then there is also Kosovo, who does not really have this candidate status at the moment. So if it was up to you, not the heads of government across Europe, how would you proceed? Would you prioritize certain countries? If so, which ones? Would you, like it was done in 2004, make a grand enlargement so that not all of those countries, but maybe 7 or 6 would join in one go? Or would you proceed differently? There are also those ideas that maybe there should be a new approach towards enlargement, that it should be more gradual. So if it was up to you, what would you do?
For me, the first principle is actually that enlargement is not some kind of annexation. It's a partnership of equals, and therefore it's very important that the countries themselves show clear, governments and civil society alike show a clear will of joining and a readiness to take the necessary steps. So just to kickstart this exchange, for me, this is an important factor as well.
Ivanna?
Well, I think that speaking from the Brussels perspective, it is about the package. So it is definitely not about pinpointing certain countries. However, so the offer is there to everybody. However, when it comes to certain criteria of of being able to, Copenhagen criteria. So if being able to bypass this criteria and fulfill the criteria, that's a different story. And this is, I think, very much the work of the Commission to assess, and then based on that, any kind of political argument should be based. And it's not just about whether Ukraine... I know that Ukraine has kicked off this whole enlargement process. I mean, this is clear for us. It's the war and the Ukraine that has been pushed the process of integration out there. However, it is still the package that we are talking about and merit-based approach that I have.
But do you see some of those countries being closer to joining European Union rather than others?
Well, that depends on which criteria you're talking about, because it's, it varies still, I think, very, very much in the region. I'm talking about Baltic.
Okay, let me rephrase it in a different way. Which of those countries would you like to see in European Union? Let me name them again. Albania, Bosnia and Herzegovina, Georgia, Moldova, Montenegro, North Macedonia, Serbia, Turkey, and Ukraine.
Which dimension of integration are we talking about? No, but now she's really pushing.
I am.
Talk about Ukraine.
If I take my position as a Latvian politician, of course I will represent Latvian interests, also geopolitical interests in European Parliament as much as possible. So definitely for us, absolutely priority is Ukraine and Moldova because of geography, just because of that, and also this is clear why. So and that's why we have to do everything what's possible for as quickly as possible to take Ukraine and Moldova in. So there would be some politicians in Europe on a prime minister level, president's level, now also in the European Parliament, who would like to see Western Balkans in. So, but not maybe. So in my view, we have to separate Serbia. Serbia, you have to separate. It's very difficult to say that it's ready for European Union, not because of the formal checking in the boxes of negotiations, but because of because of the roots of this country. And and geopolitical decision where to move. Also, if we see the Xi, Chinese leader, he visited France, which was a separate case, and then he visited Serbia and Hungary because of investment in those countries and interest geopolitical. So that's why all the rest, Western Balkans, in my view, is negotiable. It's more or less in the same boat, but it will be taken care by France and by some others, Balkan countries on the European Union. So they will push anyway in a package closer if we will decide to take in, let's say, after 1 or 2 years, not from now, but 2027, 28, maybe it's the best case scenario. So they push also this as a package. So Turkey is a different story. So I remember I was a member of convention, EU treaties. It was more than 20 years ago. Turkey is already, they were there. Turkey's representatives, they were sitting there. They are still candidate. And nobody really understands that in the nearest future will be the case. So, and Georgia is a very separate case because of the, I hope after, autumn elections in Georgia, there would be a different situation. Because what's confusing me, because if 80% of Georgians in a direction of EU, as we see in the publications currently during demonstrations, so how they can elect Georgian dream in power in elections? This is ununderstandable. If Georgian citizens will not do it in this atom during elections, and we have to supervise this at real democratic elections from EU sides, that's definitely, but it should be done by Georgians themselves. Some clear decisions. Government should change. President is the direction what they see. It's the right European Union, Zubarishvili, it's the right EU direction, and they have to vote as it's necessary for Georgian citizens. This is crucial. So
Moldova also, I'm sorry, will have the, it's coming up, the changes, potential changes to the constitution, where the question will be, will you be willing to join the EU? So it is, there, you know, for me, there is this still question on the agenda. And by the way, I don't know if you're aware, but I've talked that in Moldova, there is now such a huge influx of foreign influence in terms of cash that is going to the country to actually boycott the elections. So we are talking about the foreign influence in Georgia, in foreign influence in Moldova. It's a very difficult situation that we are in general for the region. That's why this kind of question is still very, very fragile to ask also to politicians, because we don't know where we will be standing even.
This was a little bit the point that I was making, that actually by picking and choosing those that are perhaps geographically closer to us, we cannot close our eyes to the fact that we as Europe, together, we need to sort of, like I said, future-proof us against the foreign influence. We cannot leave our closest neighbors without the clear plan and a possibility to be part of the European space of values, because that way we would just leave them in the hands of our antagonizers on the geopolitical scene. So it's also some kind of a moral but geopolitical responsibility of not abandoning our neighborhoods. And there I wanted to also come back to this point of criteria. So I dropped already one into the plate at the beginning, that this is the willingness and clear readiness of the partners to engage. But another one, and I come back to the discussion this morning, is also the question of rule of law, which is not a mere value, but a constitutional principle on to which then is based accession and our capacity to work together with these partner countries in every other policy sphere. So I think that if we are prioritizing countries in terms of the reforms that they need to make, that rule of law, anti-corruption, and resilience against foreign influence, these are key factors also that need to be addressed in the accession process.
I wanted to ask a follow-up question to Robert. You mentioned that there will be elections in Georgia in fall. Let's imagine that pro-European political party makes a new government. Would you add Georgia to the list of already consisting of Ukraine and Moldova that you mentioned in the beginning, or we still in Latvia have more vested interest in having Ukraine and Moldova and European Union as opposed to Georgia?
I would say we would like to ask from Latvian Baltic perspective also Georgia in the fast track. It's our interest.
This is a good way how to go into issues relating to institutional reforms and also political support for enlargement. You mentioned fast track. What do you mean by that? Basically, do you mean that those
it's
countries...
the first group of the countries to enlarge.
But would they still be required to fulfill everything? Or would you say that not everything is absolutely necessary?
Let's be honest. Of course, there should be some kind of the Copenhagen criteria to think that there should be some improvement. But at the end, when we have to choose between security and non-security for Europe and geopolitical losses, definitely, if we will be weak on this decision, then we have to wait it. And sometimes you have to say, okay, we will give you some transition period for those criteria, but let's take them in.
Which ones would you leave for longer-term transition? I named one which I wouldn't compromise.
Not corruption, of course, on certain level, but corruption exists everywhere in the European Union, unfortunately, like you or not. It's unfortunately the case. Rule of law, also, if you will go in details, it's not only Hungary and Poland, it's some other countries as well. You can evaluate if you are really following the judgments and how judicial system works in particular in EU member state.
So you would compromise on those?
Well, you can find some compromise which is not crucial for damage, significant damage for European Union. Let's put it like that. Mm-hmm. So I think you have to be politician because when you dream about next 20, 30 years, about 2050, which of course is not bad to put some indicators for 2050. But you have to understand that to be successful in 2050, you have to be successful in 2030, and not only on those criteria on a Green Deal, but you have to understand how looks like world in 2030. Mm-hmm. Currently, we have China is doing so. They are replacing not only in Russia instead of EU, which of course is as a trade partner, but they are significantly bigger power in a foreign trade with Africa, with Latin America, with the global south, with everything. And Europe is losing. Even Germany is losing on export sides. That means if we will continue like that, and we will not be able to take enlargement on 2030, so who are we as a 460 million people? It's a huge market and huge institution, European Union. But so what? Who cares about it if we lose our geopolitical tempo?
Elīna, I would like to address to you the same questions that you addressed to Robert. Namely, let's imagine that there is a scenario where Ukraine and Moldova, maybe some other countries, can fulfill all the criteria only like in 20 years' time, while they might be able to fulfill some criteria in 5 years' time, and there might be a political decision to take them in. Which are criteria which basically you would not be prepared to compromise with, and where would you leave more leeway?
I already mentioned now one that is I believe, a constitutional principle, which is the rule of law and human rights, democracy as principles, and not just because of their ethical value, but also European Union being ready to invest a lot in the growth and resilience of the countries joining. We have to make sure that this money doesn't flow into the pockets of the privileged few that actually might abuse it against the very objectives of the enlargement itself. There are certain lessons to be learned, of course, also of the enlargement of the 2004 in this respect. So these are the core constitutional values that would need to be defended in this enlargement process. Then again, EU has already demonstrated that there are areas that require longer-term transition, or that might be with some transitional periods relating to then implementing the actual policies. I don't know, in terms of the economic transformation or also the agricultural transformation and so on. There are certain things that can take longer time.
Okay, Ivanna, if you have something to add, then please do, but if not, I will just proceed.
No, I will add that I still think that it is very important that the values that the European Union is built on, and the rule of law and free, and democratic governance and freedom of media, those are the basic values. So I would definitely echo here whether this and whether the reason, and European integration is a very strong pull for those reforms. So I would not send the message to anyone who is a candidate right now that, that maybe we will close the eyes. We will not close the eyes. I mean, there is a reason why this union is working and has a potential to be the union of certain standards. And so it is very important to have that message to whoever the candidate status, because those reforms are painful. I mean, you are talking yourselves, looking backwards, you know that any reform is a painful process. So we have to remind that, there is a carrot and a stick, but there is a reason why there is a carrot. I would definitely, and then all the political arguments and geopolitical ones are very important, but that's another way of the process of the integration. So we can also talk about Ukraine being part of the European defense strategy already, and there's all sorts of levels of integration that we can be talking about, which are already happening now or can be happening in the future, but we can maybe dig into them later.
Okay, thank you. But when we are looking at the accession process that has already been quite long for Western Balkan countries, we see that it might take a very long time for different countries to close those accession chapters. And of course, there is a possibility to debate which ones of those are crucial and which ones might wait a bit longer. But there have been different proposals recently from leaders based in different European Union countries about taking a different approach to enlargement altogether, like making it more gradual, giving candidate countries more rights depending on how far along they are in accession process. Would you look at these kind of ideas, something that's good thing, a good thing to move somehow forward, or is it just a way how to say no, we are never going to open our doors fully to you? Or what would your general approach to this be? Is it a good thing to create some status for a country that's not a European Union member country, but it's not a typical candidate country as well, and give such a country more rights? Yeah.
Well, I can start here. So it was a bit similar to Macron's proposal for political community, which is currently, I think, dying, to my opinion, because it was part of the called waiting room before a full accession to European Union. It's created a very bad feeling, actually, and nobody from those who are not yet in EU are very happy with this. So that's why I have some doubts. We have a model in a previous enlargement, so that you can use the transition periods for a free movement, for a Schengen area, like for Romania, Bulgaria, still, unfortunately now, which is too long. And we had 4 years for most of the EU member states when in 2004 for not a free movement and to work in other countries except Ireland and UK at that time, if I correctly remember. So you can use instruments like that. Also, I suppose transition period for agriculture, common agriculture policy is possible. Let's put, for example, starting from 2028, when started new 7 years budget, let's put after 4 years of this to fully integrate in new common agriculture policy, Ukraine. I think it could be kind of compromise, but not to say that, look, you are in a waiting room, and if you will behave very well, in remaining tick boxes, you will be joined after 10 or 20 years. I think it's not good.
Mm-hmm.
It's not good.
I think it makes sense to include some kind of sort of cherries along the way in order to motivate and to keep the countries going. At the same time, these cherries should not be so sweet as to sort of prevent them from moving forward. And in a way, the accession process is already designed in a way that there's possibility, and also our cooperation with Ukraine currently shows that there is a way to strengthen cooperation even pre-accession in certain areas. And I would prioritize, for instance, cooperation in terms of youth exchanges and education, so sort of Erasmus and Horizon programs, which helps us to bring in the sort of the new thinkers into what it means to be part of the European space of exchanges. It also means certain facilitating investment programs and collaboration for improving the business collaborations. So there are ways in which these cherries can sort of be designed along the way, and they should, because some countries we see that they're so frustrated, you know, after 20 years of talks, there's no clear decision or perspective for the decision yet.
Okay, thank you, Elīna. My impression was, Ivanna, that when those ideas were first announced, both about the political community by Macron and later about those different stages of integrating countries into European Union, that some countries, candidate countries, took it not as a bad thing, but rather at least some way forward, because especially for Western Balkans, from time to time they seem to lose hope that there is any European Union perspective in the future. So this would be at least something. But would something like this also be okay for Ukraine? Or Ukraine expects full or should have full membership, and that's it?
I think we are talking about the full membership here, but speaking about that, and it is still about the budget distribution. So, and this is what it's all about. It's but at the same time, what we are seeing now, and we have to really be very clear about what is happening, actually what we would like to have and where this future enlargement is going to happen, but what is actually happening right now. At this very stage, we are having, again, I will repeat myself, the association agreement, which is very, very, very comprehensive. We have DCFTAs that are working fully within negotiations. So we are part of the Horizon program. We are slowly, the European Union is opening up the programs and the budgets to Ukraine, and sometimes some Georgia and Moldova, it depends on the case, to participate in certain programs which are very important, because this is what we're talking about, creating, building capacity in these countries. And so we are already part, I would suggest that we are already part of this progressive integration. Whether this is definitely is enough for Ukrainian, I would definitely say no, because, again, bringing the moral argument back, and bringing the argument back that all of this discussion, unfortunately, we are talking here already almost all day, but we haven't said the fact that we need to win the war. So without winning this war, you know, this discussion is very hypothetical, although these processes are happening as we speak. So we have to focus on the fact that what Ukraine can be part of, and again, I will maybe not talk about the political community, but I will talk about the Macron's idea about the European defense strategy, and maybe, and fully rightly so, Ukraine, with all the capabilities that we have developed and we are developing, can be part of, also including the budgets and also including the industry and bringing all that, the Latvian and Baltic expertise in certain areas, well, drone development, and there's other aspects to it. So, you know, I don't want to put any kind of like, so for Ukraine, this is full integration. So if you put any Ukrainian from the street right now, for them is like, why we are not part of this union already now? But because my classmate is sleeping on the European flag, and for him, understanding the gradual processes and the technical details is very difficult.
Okay, thank you. Before we move to audience questions, there's still one block of questions that I wanted to ask you about the most challenging issues relating to objections to enlargement, and what your thinking is about those. From what I've heard, is that basically there are three sets of arguments against European Union enlargement in a foreseeable future. Argument number one is that none of the candidate countries is really ready for being part of European Union, so that's one thing, and we've been discussing this a bit already, so maybe let's not focus on this one. The second one is that European Union is not ready for next enlargement, that it's already extremely complicated, and taking in even more member states, it will might get paralyzed in its decision-making procedures. And argument number three, which is not so loud in the public sphere, but I think Robert's already mentioned that, and from time to time I also hear it from those countries that are on receiving end of European Union funds at the moment, that basically they are going to take our money. Like right now, those countries that joined European Union in 2004 and a bit later, like Bulgaria and Romania, get a very large share of European Union funds. But if we take in poorer countries, then of course we will look much richer in contrast. So this is not an argument that is spoken of very loudly, but nevertheless it's a real fear for those politicians who need somehow to convince their voters that taking in more countries is a good choice also for their citizens. Would you say that some of those arguments are stronger than others? And which ones are probably the most crucial ones to address before we even conceive of new enlargement?
Well, I already mentioned one that actually Europe itself has to reform our decision-making, our rules, rule book, and our capacity, in order for our capacity to act not to be hindered by enlargement. But this is already imperative now, because we see rulers like Orban holding Europe hostage with the menace of veto over questions that should have our unanimity. So there is already a clear case for making qualified majority voting more of a rule across the different set of areas and so on. So there are homeworks that should be done, and it's only ourselves to blame if we don't manage to do this in this next 5 years while we have the time still. I wanted to come to your question of the fear of enlargement as something taking our influence away from us. And I think that this is hugely exaggerated. Europe is not, and first of all, Europe is not and should not only be about money. We have to look also at let's say, our influence in decision making. And here, I think especially by gaining allies like Ukraine and Moldova in terms of the Baltic positioning with regard to Russia, with regard to the broader geopolitical agenda, we would gain serious allies. So as regards foreign security policy, CSDP, I think there actually our positions would be strengthened within the EU. Then as regards the economy, I would like to actually see the Baltic states to have a joint strategy for what are the objectives as to our economic performance or competitiveness, or what is it that we want to get out of this enlargement, and how do we get there? What kind of changes that requires with regard to our agricultural policy, what changes that requires with regard to, I don't know, developing our clean tech industry, or what do we want to achieve in collaboration with newcomers in digital and cyberspace. So I would argue for at least national but better Baltic common strategy that would design what our economic input and output would be from this. And I have heard also this sort of scaremongering about, all the countries that are now net recipients, they will actually become the net donors. But I've seen Estonians analyze this, and the argument is that only actually Spain might change from the net recipient to a net donor. There's also a strong argument for us not to be laying on our laurels of being the poor part of Europe. We should finally get our act together and actually get our economies going so that we get our GDP high enough not to be demandeur of the EU funds. And then in this one, I take pride in all our colleagues in Estonia, which have already, passed on to the next level, while here we're still sort of counting the pennies that we would get out of the fact of being poor. So let's get our act together and build a strong economic case for us, including basing on the opportunities presented by enlargement.
Thank you, Elīna. Robert, do you believe that this is going to be the argument that will prevent Ukraine from joining the European Union?
What Iveta said about these three arguments, it's very interesting. So from you leaders, you will hear the first argument. Accession countries are not ready, so that's my main argument. But of course, it's not the key issue. Key issue is other two. The one is to how to create a different policy power. Because let's imagine Ukraine and Poland, by all the influence in the Council side, would be equal to Germany. It's mean a Council decision, a power move to totally the unknown situation. So if we can imagine two partners on a border, Poland and Ukraine in the future can be good partners on a Council side. So that's point one. It's very difficult to change it, and also commission composition and things like that. So, but the second one, financial, the third one is even more painful because you see when we are speaking about the federal future, sometimes I am not a federalist future. The 1% of GDP, which is the current budget of EU, 4 years. I was rapporteur on midterm review for this current MFF, which is 7 years budget last year. So we can see how difficult for frugal countries, those who are paying in majority, to move even a bit. Even 50 billion for Ukraine was put it outside of the ceiling. So they made it equilibristic how to put it financially. So there is no will for the richest country to put more in a pocket, but to take some institutional powers. They would like to take it from the smaller member state. And I always saying one thing: U.S. is a confederation, but the federal budget of U.S. is more than 20% of GNI. It would be more correct, not GDP, but GNI is federal budget. In EU is 1%. You cannot, without public money transfers, to create or something similar like US, not even speaking about those dreams. And so that's why but I don't see any will to put more in a common pot from the frugal countries. And this is a crucial point. Of course,
it's changing. It's
not changing. It's just changing in a different direction. So you are dreamers. You are dreamers. Maybe you are not alone, not the only one, like John Lennon was thinking. But
would you say that it could change if European Union would be financed in a different way? Like it would not be so obvious that who is paying more, like some tax or something that.
This is a strong case for more common resources that would feed to the EU budget.
Okay. Okay, so Ivanna, if you have...
No, I would only like to say that in terms of when we talk about budgets, I mean, just keep in mind that reconstruction in Ukraine will be much more costly than any accession. Keep that in mind, please. And winning the war is very important if you have any argument talking about migration, because it's not just the geopolitical thing, because we have now 7 or 8 million refugees. We will have 14 million refugees in EU if we don't win this war. So please keep all these things in mind when having that moral argument, which hopefully we will defend in the European Parliament. And why is that is important also is to keep in mind that we need to strengthen the European Parliament also for the sake of this enlargement happening, because the way, from what I understand, the way the Parliament, the role of the Parliament in monitoring, scrutiny, and participating in the kind of stakeholder debates while the accession process of the enlargement is happening has not been enough. So, and that was also in the resolution that the European Parliament has put in December in 2023. The European Parliament role has to be increased for the sake of putting these democratic and moral arguments on the table.
Okay, thank you. Now we have around 20 minutes for questions and remarks from you, dear audience. If you have something to say or ask to our participants. I see one raised hand. Are there any more? If yes, just please. Okay, so let's take in three remarks, and then I'll try to understand what to do with those. Okay.
Hello, my name is Artur Spīlāts. I'm from the Latvian University Social Sciences faculty. And this is my third question of the day. I'm very interested in politics. And the question is about a poll that was conducted in LSM today. It was just published about different positions of different political candidates. And I just would like to remind the audience and remind you about the answers about these questions. So one of the questions I want to get a clearer answer on in the case of EU expansion is about the protections of relationships. And the question, there are two sides of the questions, and you can pick two answers from both of the spheres. And one side is bigger protections for the modern relationship types of humans, or bigger protection of the traditional types of humans. And I would like to remind that Mrs. Volochiy answered to this question that modern times should be more protected. Mrs. Pinto
Will it be about accession?
Yes, it's about accession.
Okay, very roundabout way.
About more traditional types. And the question about accession is, should these positions should be taken into consideration when looking at candidate states, about the civil liberties of conducting your relations, creating and conducting relationships with other persons.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. And so some other remarks?
Yes, I am Evgeny Luria. I would ask candidates. We all here are for EU enlargement, and many of us are for faster enlargement. I think we need Ukraine in as fast as possible, but many people have some concerns. We believe that Ukrainian and other peoples from other candidates have a strong will to become EU members, but we know that a strong will is not enough. I am sure that Polish and Hungary had a strong will, but former Polish government and Orban now make some moves that and we doubt that they agreed with principal European values. Maybe the new states, when will be in, seems that this problem can be again. What do you think about it?
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you. And the third remark, there was okay, maybe. No, okay, both of them then, okay. Yes, let's start with you and then we'll go to the lady.
Okay, I'm Ian Bond from the Centre for European Reform. So my question is, decision-making has been one of the key questions in the internal reform of the EU that may be necessary for enlargement. Do the three of you think that Latvia should be prepared, or all countries should be prepared to give up their veto rights in areas like foreign policy and taxation? If not, why not? And if so, why?
Thank you.
Yeah, my first question would also go a bit in this similar direction, but more referring, I mean, also to internal reforms, but also referring to the AFCO report, which is already now, has been issued and is basically lying in the council. So what is your take on that with regards to internal reform? Because that goes much further than simply preparing the European Union for enlargement. And if we really go down that road with, that has been ambitiously triggered by the European Parliament, how would that affect the enlargement perspective? So do we do that before enlarging, or why we enlarge, or afterwards? I'm just interested to hear your take on the scope of the reforms that we actually need with regards to treaty change as such. And a very small question, which was raised in the end, because you were mentioning reconstruction and then the accession, and for me, this is actually the opportunity to link both procedures, in terms of, because if we reconstruct Ukraine, why don't we reconstruct it in a way that it is prepared for enlargement, for accession, basically. So I think this is something to consider, but how that could technically look like, I'm not really sure, but maybe you have more insights with regards to that.
Okay, let's do it like that. I will rephrase some of those questions, and for two of those questions, I would ask you to give very short answers. I will allow myself to rephrase your question to attitudes towards LGBTQ community in accession countries. Whether this should be a factor in determining whether a country merits joining European Union or not. A treatment of this community. It's not exactly what you asked, but it's very hard to formulate in a different way. What do you think? Yes, no?
No, for me, it's an easy answer. So any accession country should fulfill fundamental human rights, also in LGBT rights direction. But it's all the rest is Ukraine decision how they will move. Are they going to move some more further to in the positive direction of these rights or not? It's up to you. But you have to fulfill minimum. But all the rest is for the candidate country.
Okay, and you agree? Okay.
Well, I think that this is a fundamental right, and it's part of the question. So, and I represent the liberal group in the parliament. So, I mean, I work for the liberal group in the parliament and in the secretariat. So, I would stand pro that it has to be fulfilled.
Okay, and you and Elīna also agree. So.
I think also the fact, I mean, sometimes it takes a war to recognize what are our basic values. And in this case, we saw that I think Ukraine realizes that we need every person to defend the country. And disregarding the sexual orientation, identity, and so on. And I was very proud to see that actually Ukraine ratified the Istanbul Convention before Latvia did, which shows the importance of ensuring that people feel safe and respected in their own country in order to be able to defend it. So this was a poetic sort of bracket.
Okay, the second question, again, I will rephrase it in a different manner. Of course, we see what Orban is doing right now in European Union, how it's paralyzing decision-making. Out of the list of 9 accession countries, once again, so Albania, Bosnia and Herzegovina, Georgia, Moldova, Montenegro, North Macedonia, Serbia, Turkey, Ukraine. Would you say that there is any of those countries where you would not really feel that there might be apprehensions that if they do join European Union, that they might move in the same direction as Hungary did recently, like behave in a very pro-Kremlin manner and start to oppress human rights in their countries and rule of law? Or would all of those 9 countries merit very close scrutiny on how they are behaving on human rights related issues and in their general political attitudes? Sorry, it's not an easy question to answer, but nevertheless, would you be fearful of I don't know, political change in any of those countries bringing in a big problem for European Union?
As I said, sorry, Ivanna, please go ahead. We started 5 minutes.
I think this is one of the critique of the previous accession about the fact that there were certain benchmarks, for example, in the rule of law, that we still don't have benchmarks, so we need to work on them. So there's certain things that EU is learning in the process of integration, in the process of enlargement, and these mistakes hopefully should not be repeated again. So let's learn from them and just move forward and see how we make this integration process based on the values and from the very beginning, rather than, you know, reverse. So we don't get to the reverse stages as we have experienced in other countries.
Robert, you said when I'm responding to one of my previous questions that is like this argument group that is mostly spoken aloud by political leaders in European Union, but that's not like the main issue why some candidates have not really have no true prospect of joining European Union. But nevertheless, do you see some merit in this argument?
Well, you see, I already said about Georgia case. If it's this current government, of course, it's a very high risk if Georgian dream in power after fall elections. So it's no way, to my opinion. With Erdogan, well, let's be honest, it's also no real democracy also because of also threshold for elections for Kurds and things like that. So, but I would like also to answer this question about veto.
Oh no, this
and
is
about
my final one.
Okay.
Okay. So that basically is like I will combine those two questions together about what kind of institutional change is or is not necessary. It could be abolishing veto powers. It could be something else that's on the line in that list that proposes different reforms for internal structure of European Union. Would you say that something in this list is really crucial for European Union to move forward as a bigger union or not? And if yes, which of those reforms are really crucial?
About internal reforms of EU?
In both internal reforms and abolishing veto power or something that would make
let's consider, we already discussed about money, about other things, which is, of course, part of these reforms, but very significant, actually. Veto, to my eyes, is not the crucial point. So why? So in AFCO report, which is to Guy Verhofstadt and other guys, I was chairing the voting procedure actually on this AFCO report, and that was interesting. You can see there is a more and more qualified majority votes, except enlargement. You can see in this report still is the only exception almost for unanimity, it's enlargement. What we are talking about today, about enlargement. There's even those federalists like Guy Verhofstadt wanted to keep enlargement in a member state level, so for veto powers. It's not fair, you see. That's why those national, well, I'm not blaming them, but the national interests are very important in member states, and let's fully understand. In the case of Hungary, of course, they took so much Russian links on energy sector, on economy and everything, so they are, I would say, very much taken by Kremlin, definitely so. But Hungarians, like we are not, they are voting so. And that's why at diplomatic level, you have to find some kind of good measures that not to blame Hungarian citizens, that they are voting for the wrong government time by time, but to try to find the solutions that Hungary became more democratic country, but not always change constitutional points. And it's very difficult. We in Latvia did also with referendums and some years ago. When we had a current political problem, we changed our Satversme, our constitution. So, and it was wrong later on. We understood that we trying to find the political situation in a midterm 2-3 years political problems, we will try to find the constitutional way to solve those problems, which is, to my opinion, a wrong decision. You have to find diplomatic foreign affairs arguments to find a good direction and to make all EU member states democratic.
But would you then basically say that no large reforms are necessary for European Union?
Not so much. Otherwise, it will take a very long time because constitutional treaty changes. Maybe if it's very, how to say, technical, related with finance, and if there is a political agreement, it could be okay. But I remember what's happened with constitutional treaty drafts, where they were voted out in France, in Netherlands. Later on, Lisbon Treaty first draft was voted out in Ireland. So we don't have such a time today. We are in a different situation. There is a war in Ukraine and in Europe. So if we will start to create constitutional forum again, convention, let's say, we will speak 2 years there. So people in Ukraine will not only Ukraine and Baltic states will not understand how you are meeting every month to speak about constitutional treaty changes for 2 years. when is the war going on.
Like
so it's just
last
not time.
follow-up question, and then we will move to
the women.
Yeah. Oh, sorry.
Sorry, but I
No,
asked them.
just last question. Would you believe that the European Union can function as a union of 30 plus countries, including Ukraine, Moldova, some Balkan countries, without treaty change, without looking?
I am economist and politician, not a lawyer. Well, perhaps constitutional lawyers, of course, they said there is necessary some constitutional. But then let's keep as less as possible, because even constitutional treaty changes, amendments are possible. But it should be less politically divisive. That's the only way how you can proceed quickly. Otherwise, it will take 10 years at least. So that's over.
Okay, Elīna, do you see a way forward here?
Yes, for me the answer is actually quite simple. Enlargement or not, it's even our citizens that ask for Europe that can deliver, that can act in this time of change, in this time when we don't have time. Exactly. We need to have an ability to decide without being held hostage by, I think, somebody who is just relying on a handbrake rather than building alliances. We are in the EU now for 20 years. We cannot still rely on these handbrakes that put us in the windshield every time we stop. And therefore, our citizens have asked for it in the conference on the future of Europe to make changes as to how we decide. We need to relinquish this right of veto across several policy areas. We need also to bring in more citizens in our decision making. There are new ways how to do this in order for people to believe that Europe makes a difference in your life and it can act on the global scene with one voice.
Okay, I don't have follow-up questions to that. Okay, Ivanna.
Well, from echoing a little bit what you just said, but I would also like to point out, I mean, we were discussing in the previous sessions, I mean, how many times we can send Orban to have, we said coffee, but he went to a toilet. So how many, and we also know how many times we have had, you know, and all the echo of this process that has happened. And so this only actually questioned all the role of the institutions, and all the processes that were behind were just not okay, just because we have the unanimity on that subject. So I'm not saying, you know, I'm actually quite agreeing on the fact of opening the treaties is the tricky thing where we are sitting at. So this is definitely the case, just because there is a, you know, we are here again speaking more or less one voice when it comes to enlargement. But, you know, if we start asking questions in some other member states, we are running into a big, you know, hole that can actually hit us back. However, there are certain areas, and again, foreign affairs maybe is one of them, where there is, you know, we should be looking into maybe changing that. And, you know, but you are speaking, and I highly respect your political work from the parliament perspective as it is now, and it already was difficult. What we are going to be facing in the next 5 years, how that parliament will be looking at, including all those very important questions which are maybe for Latvia very important to really defend, this is where the big question also in the unanimity comes on top.
But it's on council level, it's not in the parliament.
I know, but it will be echoing again among the institutions. This is what I was saying before.
No, I think these were very passionate responses, and it's a good thing because European Parliament and
Europe is passionate.
Yes, sometimes it's missing this component in Latvian debates, so that's a great thing. I think that all the participants here really.
Yeah, we have to go play some sports now.
Well, Latvian traditional game, which nobody knows.
Yes.
Perhaps if somebody knows from foreign students here,
Who knows Novus?
what
Who knows
exactly
Novus can come to Vidzemes market and join us there.
Yeah, it's like billboard. It is
There will be also like a pool.
Yeah, pool. But
Yeah.
so yes, and it's available to everyone, like 11 or 12 party list competitions. Well, but the teams
And a hockey
are running.
screen. And a hockey
Yeah,
screen.
but if we are thinking about priorities, priority is Ukraine and
Campaign time.
Moldova, other countries joining European Union in a foreseeable future. As we heard, it's not a straightforward path, but nevertheless, there are different opinions on how to make it a reality. But nevertheless, none of the participants here, and from what I understand, also on the audience, doubt that this is something that is very much needed and necessary. policy, and then it's up to politicians to find the will to make it happen. Both politicians in European Parliament, at governmental level, wherever, every voice counts in this matter. So thank you very much, dear participants, and also please join me in thanking them. And also thank you, dear audience, for being very active participants. So now some of
Now we'll get active.
Yeah.
We are not running. So
Fingers crossed.